Most people don't lose their integrity all at once. They lose it at threshold, in an argument, in a moment of urgency, in a room where everyone else is saying yes. Pressure doesn't destroy character, it reveals what governs it. I'm Kay McLeod, and this is Integrity Under Pressure, a podcast about self governance, consequence literacy, and how to protect your integrity when willpower isn't enough. Because integrity isn't a personality trait, it's a governance skill. Most people think integrity is tested during dramatic moments, big decisions, major conflicts, life altering choices. But in reality, integrity is tested somewhere far less glamorous, at a coffee counter, in traffic, in the middle of a meeting when someone interrupts you, in a text message that lands with the wrong tone. Those moments are small, almost forgettable, but they carry a particular kind of pressure, not the kind that explodes, the kind that activates. You feel it in the body before anything else happens. Your nervous system shifts, your breathing changes, your attention sharpens, your mind begins composing a reply before the other person finishes speaking. And suddenly something interesting is happening. You're no longer responding. You are preparing to correct, preparing to defend, preparing to put someone back in their place. And that moment right there is where integrity actually lives. Not in the dramatic moments, in the small ones. I was reminded of this recently at a coffee shop. Nothing remarkable, just a normal morning. I walked into the coffee shop to grab coffee before heading to the studio. The place was busy. The barista behind the counter looked tired, slightly irritated, and about 2 seconds away from quitting humanity altogether. Which, to be fair, is a reasonable emotional state for someone working a morning coffee shift. Anyone who has interacted with human beings before caffeine has had the time to stabilize their personality knows the risk. Coffee shops are basically emotional triage centers. But when I placed my order, the response that came back carried a little edge. Not aggressive, just dismissive. A tone that said, I would rather be doing literally anything else. And instantly something happened in my body. Activation. My nervous system registered the interaction and friction. My attention narrowed. My mind began constructing a response, not a dramatic one, just a corrective one. The kind that says, you don't get to speak to me like that. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you had looked at me in that moment, you wouldn't have seen anything dramatic. I was just standing at the counter, but internally, a conversation was already happening. And if you've ever had one of these moments, you know exactly what I mean. The mind begins writing a speech, a small courtroom drama unfolds in your head, the prosecution prepares its case. Your dignity has been disrespected. The evidence is overwhelming. Justice must be served, preferably with a well timed sentence delivered with surgical precision. Humans are very good at writing speeches we should not give, which is why the most important moment in self governance often happens before any words leave your mouth. It happens when you notice the signal. The signal is the body's early warning system, and the body always speaks first. Heart rate rises, muscles tighten, attention narrows. The brain begins preparing for confrontation. Neuroscience tells us that when the brain perceives social threat, even something as small as tone, the amygdala's jobs is simple: protect the organism. It does not specialize in nuance, it specializes in urgency. which means the brain often treats a mildly rude barista the same way it treats an approaching tiger. Admittedly, the barista is unlikely to eat you, but your nervous system hasn't completed that analysis yet. And this is where most reactions are born, not in thought, in physiology, which means something very important. If you want to govern your behavior, you must learn to recognize the signal before the sequence unfolds. Because once the sequence begins, the reaction is much harder to stop. The sequence looks like this: signal, interpretation, narrative, reaction. Signal says something's off. Interpretation says they're disrespecting me. And then narrative says this always happens. And the reaction says, let me fix this. And once the reaction begins, the conversation has already left neutral territory. But on that morning in the coffee shop, something else happened. Instead of following the sequence, I noticed the signal, the tightening, the internal speech forming, the small surge of adrenaline. And I had a quiet thought. You're leaking, Kay, which is my personal way of saying your internal state is about to spill onto someone else. That moment matters because recognition creates choice. Without recognition, reaction is automatic. With recognition, something else becomes possible: interception. Instead of responding immediately, I paused and I took a slow breath, not a dramatic meditation breath, just enough to reset the nervous system. Slow inhale, longer exhale, another breath in. Within a few seconds, the activation dropped. The body settled. My thinking brain came back online. And something became clear. The barista was probably not thinking about me at all. They were thinking about the long line, the broken espresso machine, the fact that their shift started before sunrise, which is a universal moment when human beings question their career choices. So instead of correcting the tone, I simply completed the transaction. Coffee. Thank you. And then I moved on. Nothing dramatic happened, no confrontation, no speech, just neutrality. And that's the point. Standing steady in the heat is rarely dramatic. It's quiet, almost invisible, but it changes the trajectory of the interaction because reactions don't just affect the moment, they create ripples. One sharp comment becomes another, tone escalates, defensiveness appears, and suddenly a small moment becomes a conflict. Most conflicts begin this way, not with big problems, with small heat. Heat that someone fails to regulate. Think about how often this happens in daily life. A colleague sends a short email that sounds dismissive, someone cuts you off in traffic, or a partner responds with a tone that feels sharper than expected. Your brain fills in the gaps. They meant that, they're disrespecting me, they're doing it to me, and the body prepares to respond. But here's the doctrine hidden in moments like this: heat is information, it is not an instruction. Your nervous system is telling you something changed, but it is not telling you what to do. Governance begins when you refuse to let the loudest moment control the response. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said it this way: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Which sounds simple until you remember that the reaction system is very fast, faster than conscious thought, which means the real skill is recognizing the signal early enough to intercept the sequence. Standing steady in the heat does not mean suppressing emotion. It means regulating the moment before emotion becomes behavior. And this is where integrity becomes practical, not philosophical, because integrity is not what you believe about yourself. Integrity is how you behave when the nervous system is activated. And the truth is, most of those moments are small: coffee shop moments, traffic moments, meeting moments, parenting moments, moments where a sentence could escalate a situation or dissolve it, which means integrity is rarely practiced in the moments people imagine. It's practiced in the small ones, the ones nobody applauds, the ones nobody remembers except you. Because those moments are where internal authority is built. Every time you intercept a reaction, you strengthen a muscle. The muscle that says, I decide what happens next. Not the barista, not the email, not the tone, you. And that muscle becomes stronger with practice, which leads to a simple but powerful question: where are your barista moments? Where does small heat show up in your day? The meeting comment, the traffic lane change, the email that arrives with a tone you don't like, because those moments will continue appearing. They are part of human interaction. The question is not whether heat will arrive. The question is what governs you when it does. Do you follow the sequence? Signal, interpretation, narrative, reaction? Or do you intercept it? Signal, breath, discernment, choice. Because standing steady in the heat is not about controlling the world around you. It's about governing what happens inside you when the temperature rises. And once you learn to do that, something interesting happens. Small moments stop turning into unnecessary battles, which leaves you with far more energy for the moments that actually matter. So the next time you feel the small surge of activation, pause. Notice the signal. Take a breath and ask yourself a simple question. Is this moment asking for reaction or is it asking for governance? Because the answer to that question will quietly shape the kind of person you are becoming. If this episode did anything, let it be this. You saw the pattern. Pressure is not the problem. The question is whether you govern yourself inside it. Hold that and decide what you're no longer willing to do on autopilot. Because integrity isn't a personality trait, it's a governance skill. I'll see you on the next episode.